Okay, so namaste and welcome back to everybody. Thank you so much for being with us here today on the first day of our book launch party for this beautiful book. And I want to introduce Sandi Goodwin. Yay! Sandi Goodwin is the author of this beautiful chapter, also about her family. Intergenerational Gifts Guide the Way. Now, let me read a little bit about Sandi. I was actually in your bio. I learned some more about you that I had not known as I was preparing for this. So Sandi is an ERYT 500, which means she's an advanced yoga teacher. She's a yoga and meditation teacher, an Ayurvedic health counselor, and a posture alignment specialist. I learned here that she has 19 years of public school and private school education, which she retired from, and then 17 years of teaching yoga and meditation, which she also just retired from. And she's now focused on writing poetry, memoir, and young adult fiction. How cool is that? Then I just love this next thing you said. She's excited about being in her 60s, embracing silver hair, wisdom lines, and an abundant waistline as evidence of a fully. I'm just like, I just love that. So Sandi, thank you so much for writing your chapter about intergenerational gifts. So tell us what motivated you to write a chapter in this book, Unleashing the Courageous Feminine. What moved you to do this?
Oh gosh. Well, first I just really want to, thank and honor Sherry and Elfie and Sharakeen for their stories. I mean, I've read their stories, but hearing them, come from their lips like that is such a gift. It's been really powerful for me to be here. I'm so honored to be here with such amazing, powerful women. So, um, but yeah, this program really helped me really process a time in my life that was really painful and that was really difficult. And and I didn't know I was going to write about that particular thing when I entered your program. I just knew after, I've worked with you for a long time, Laura, and I just knew you would guide me to the right story. And here it was. This is the one that came forth. It's the one that needed processed. And it's just been a really healing journey for me. And what I really hope is that it is a healing journey for other people as well, that people will, if they resonate with any part of my story, they'll know that they're not alone. It might give them some ideas of ways they can make their way out of their situation or out of their heartbreak or trauma or whatever it is they're going through. And yeah, and reach out and find community to
Beautiful.
heal with.
Well, we're going to dive into your story in a little bit. And I want to say I totally agree with you. It's one thing to read everybody's stories, and then to hear them here showing up vulnerably, telling them is really different. I'm going to push just a tiny bit on this part. What is it that motivated you to become a writer? Like you have been a public and private school teacher and then a yoga teacher, and now you're devoting yourself to writing. What led to that shift, and why have you wanted to move in that direction?
Well, it's interesting. I just wrote this in a newsletter and I had forgotten about it for a while. That I've always wanted to be a writer since I was like 10 years old. I remember telling my dad, I want to write a review column in the newspaper. And he said, well, just do it. I mean, I could have used a little more guidance than that. And of course, I didn't do that at age 10. But my dad really, for all his faults, he did model for me, um, you know, doing self-teaching yourself, just doing things, don't not having limits. And so I always thought throughout my whole life of, teaching, I always just had in the back of my mind, my fantasy job was to be a writer. And I
Mm.
just was kind of content with it just to be my fantasy job that I knew I would never do, but it
Oh,
was like always this dream, that I had. And I don't know, after this traumatizing experience where I ended up really having to close my yoga business. I didn't intend to do that. I intended to teach yoga till I dropped. But I really had to give it up to create space to heal. And, and then I turned 60 and I started thinking about, wow, my body is changing. This part of my life is different. Um, I'm in the last, trimester of my life is what I kept thinking.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to want to realize any dreams that I have, I better hop to it and get to it. And so, when this opening came up, I thought, what the heck? And I do have two manuscripts, one adult, a young adult fiction story, and one memoir, languishing on my computer at this time, meant one for many, many years. And my idea was to start doing something with that, with this space and time that I have after retiring. And it just wasn't happening on my own. I knew I needed help. I tried another book coach one-on-one, very expensive, didn't work, had to stop that. I just wasn't ready. And I don't know. I thought, well, maybe I need a smaller step between my own book and, nothing, and to my own book. And this chapter was just the perfect step for me, I
Love
think.
that, and I agree for a lot of people, a smaller step and in a group, the motivation and the support and all of you supporting each other and having me there cheerleading and try this next and let's do this. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's dive into your story.
Okay.
So, tell us about the intergenerational gifts. Tell us about your grandmother and your mother and what their stories are and what you got from them.
Oh, well, my mother's mother, was just such a joy and inspiration to me. My mother struggled with mental health issues and with uh, horrible trauma and things in her own life. And so she was not as present for me as my grandmother was.
Oh,
She
wow.
was always there. She was joyful. She was always laughing, always really very present there with me. And so I really idolized her. And and so, she passed long, long ago. And but then my mother really stepped up at a time in my life, later in my life, when I had a really extraordinarily heart-wrenching experience, heartbreaking experience, just shattering, really. My only son died in a motorcycle accident, unexpectedly, at just before he turned 30. And I was just completely incapacitated for a long time. And I had lived, far away from my mom. And so she came to be with me for a while and really helped me through that time. She was very tender with me. She was helpful. She was such a take charge woman, very powerful take charge woman that, she came and, I felt like I had like an army behind me, or next to me with her. If anything was hard, she's like, well, okay, I can do this, or we can do this, or you can do this. She was really very supportive in that way, which she was not able to be when I was younger. And so she was really rising to the occasion. I was kind of surprised. Then she decided to move near me. And because she had had some losses just there too, she decided we needed each other. So for the first time in my life, I had a relationship, an adult relationship with my mother. And so, and my son left me with two beautiful grand girls, and they were young at the time. And so, we started hanging out together a lot. My mom and the grandkids and I, started just being together, just doing things, having, spa days and doing crafts and um, cooking
Wow.
and, just hanging out together. And it was really how I healed, was from not only at that point, it was really about the family connections and seeing not only how, and my grandmother had lost a child and a grandchild. My mother had had multiple miscarriages that broke her heart. And so I began to realize that they too had lost, and that they too had like persevered and and forged on despite the challenges. And then I had these two lovely granddaughters who are strong, courageous women in their own right.
Wow.
And
Slow this down a little bit 'cause this is so powerful. How old were the girls when their father died?
8 and 2.
Whoa, that's little. And who did they live with?
Their mother, yeah. Yeah, my daughter-in-law, who is just a gem and I adore, and we're still all very close.
Was he
And
living near you when he died?
she was about an hour away. She lived about an hour away. So close enough that, you know,
See them pretty often, but not like they weren't like living with you. Take us through the moment when you found out that he died.
oh, um I just stopped. I just didn't believe it. I was in complete denial. I It's like, this can't be happening. I don't believe it. There's a mistake, you know. Yeah, I had to go see him for myself to believe.
See his body.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you go by yourself? Did you go with a friend?
No, we went as a family. The
Your mom?
youngest child did not go. My mom wasn't here yet. But my daughter-in-law and my oldest granddaughter wanted to go. And so, and my partner at the time, we all went, and I don't know who else all was there. I think maybe it was just us. We went, and my mother was on her way. She lived a ways away, so she didn't arrive till the next day.
When you say, I read this chapter probably 2 months ago, and I haven't reread it. So it's interesting. I'm coming at it fresh in this interview. Um, when you say I was debilitated, was that right away, or was it over time that you became debilitated after he died?
No, I was debilitated pretty much right away.
What did
I
it look
I probably spent, I don't know, 3 months kind of just staring out the window. I mean, I did what I had to. I mean, luckily my partner did all the driving. I don't think I was safe to drive. I mean, I felt like it was, looking back, um, I feel like it was like having a toddler. You had to watch them all the time, make sure they didn't like walk out into the street in front of a car, or make sure they, drank water or ate or whatever. I just, I couldn't really do much of anything myself. And so my mother came and helped.
I seem to remember when the way you wrote that was almost humorous in here. That she said, "Would you like me to come?" And there was some little like, "Of course," or
Oh, yeah. At first I said, oh, no, you don't need to
"You
come.
don't." Right, that's what it was. "You don't need to come. I'm fine."
Yeah, she was going through something herself. She had just lost her husband like 2 weeks before my son died. She had lost her husband, which was expected. I mean, so she was going through her own thing. So I said, no, 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 you don't need to come. And
"I'm fine. I don't need help."
I'm fine. And then in pretty short order, I called her back and said, please come. And she said, well, of course I'm coming. I'm on my way. I'm already got,
I think I remembered that. There's that light humor there. "Oh, no, I don't need you. Ah, please come."
It's because, like my son said, my son, when he was 8 years old, he hit it on the head. I remember it was one of his famous quotes, and he has many in our family, but his one of his most famous quotes is he was saying something to someone. He said, "Yeah, I come from a long line of strong women." He said at 8 years old. I mean, he got it. He knew what was going on, and so yeah, here I was trying to be that strong woman when it wasn't time for me to be strong. It was time for me to allow others to come in and help.
Right. So sometimes what I'm getting is sometimes our strength is in letting other people help us.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Because then when things got worse, which they did, um, you know, 10 years later, the worst of, part of the story, if that wasn't bad enough, even,
Want to tell us that worst part?
yeah, well, my mother, I was taking, she lived up here for 10 years, and she eventually died of Alzheimer's uh, in 2022. And just a month later, one of my nephews was killed in a house fire.
Hmm. Mm, wow.
And then just a few days after that, 4 days after that, my dad had a stroke. And less than a week after that, he died as well.
Oh,
And I was just like,
wow. Your mother died, your father died, and a nephew in a fire.
yeah,
Wow, that's a lot of loss.
it was a lot. And then,
And that was during the pandemic too, right? Which just accentuated everything.
it was. In fact, I had to drive to Coos Bay to see my father before he passed in the hospital while I had COVID.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they let you in the hospital.
In Coos Bay, it was amazing. I told the doctor, he said, "Are you coming?" I said, "I have COVID." He said, "Put a mask on and come." And I was like, "Okay." And I walked right into that hospital in there. Nobody even,
I'm glad they let you visit your own father. Yeah.
yeah. Yep. I was able to see him because actually the day I saw him, he died early the next morning. So I got there just in time to see him.
So for somebody who has a history of a traumatic death, right? Your son dying suddenly, unexpectedly, then later, other deaths can just be harder.
Yeah, it kind of re-triggers, it re-triggers some of that grief.
Yep.
Um, I felt like I I processed the heck out of my son's loss. I mean, I could not get enough, grief groups and rituals and talking. I mean, it goes on to this day. It never goes away. And so to have that freshly come, and my mom's death was a blessing, really. It was at a good time. She didn't linger, she didn't suffer, she didn't really know what was happening anymore. And it was a good death. You can have, if you can
Absolutely.
think of that. It was very
Absolutely.
peaceful. She had breakfast one morning and then she just closed her eyes and went. And so that I probably could have processed, but then my nephew Johnny died. And then I was like, oh my gosh, and then when this happened to my dad, and while I had COVID, and it was a lot to process. But then being the executor for my mother, actually one of the hardest parts of all of it was um, the shunning and the cruelty that I got from my family for being the executor of my mom's estate. Mom
Mm.
was very clear, and I was very clear about what was to happen, but there were people that didn't like it. And so I became a target, and members of my family who I was very, very close to for their whole lives, all of a sudden, just cut me off. And it was extraordinarily painful to try to deal with the grief of the losses, which was paramount. And then the loss of these living family members, and try to be functional enough to execute
Wow.
rest. And
How did you survive that? And how did your family strength or your mother's strength help you?
well, I just felt her with me. And I knew my grandmother and my mother both had just survived so much. And I knew my mother had executed her parents' wills as well and gotten some grief from it. It's a very common thing, apparently. You learn when you have an experience how common these experiences are and how painful they are. And it's hard to understand how painful they are. So, unless you've been through it yourself, and so I just, I'm sorry, I lost the thread of the
How
question.
did you get through this difficult time of the shunning by family members?
Well, the family members that were there for me, I mean, my grandgirls were amazing. Um, I, my nephew was amazing. My daughter-in-law was amazing. I had other family members as well, but they were the ones that were close by, and they stayed close. They checked in on me. They spent time with me. And then just my community. I mean, I was so grateful that all the years that I lived here, both, teaching yoga, I had my yoga community supporting me. My physical community where I live here in Portland is very close knit here. they were there for me all the time. All I had to do was walk out the door and there'd be somebody out in their garden that I could talk to, that would come and say, how are you doing? And, do you want to go for a walk? And, let's have tea. Or, I had one yoga student who, she said, I think I should take you to a yoga class. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
So she took me to a yoga class, and it was just what I needed. And so I just, and just my friends that have been my friends forever, I was just so grateful for all of them, because they all, well, not all, it's amazing when you go through something like this, especially deep grief. Some friends disappear. Some people don't know how to handle that. They don't know how to be there for you. And so they leave. And then sometimes the people that you least expect stepped up
I've seen that too. Mm-hmm.
there. And so I kind of had this little grief community, basically, that, we always turn to each other for those things. So
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And everyone, I've just put in the chat for you Sandi's contact information. She has other books coming out. Sandi Goodwin at yahoo.com, www.mywordgarden.com. So go ahead and check her out or be in touch with you. Are there any, with Sandi, are there any final words you have for somebody going through a crisis? I know losing a child is one of the most painful losses anyone can ever go through. Anything you want to share, final words of wisdom about that?
just find a community, find people who have been through what you've been through, because those are the ones who will know how to be there for you. Cultivate your community, not only to support you when you need it, but so you can support them when they need it. Because this is a time when bonds and community connections are more important than ever. After COVID and everything that's happening in the world, the fabric of our communities is fraying. And so we need to work really hard to weave them together, to be there for each other, and be proactive in building your community now, because you never know when they'll need you and you need them.
I agree. I love that, Sandi. We need our community. I know Jim and I, when we moved to Sedona, which we've only been here 4.5 years, we really put a lot of time and energy into building a community. And when Jim had a stroke, I really leaned into that, and we never know what will happen to either one of us. And so all of us need that resilience. Well, thank you so much. And everybody, I've also put into the chat, and Sandi, you probably want to go and read these beautiful comments that are in chat for you. I've put into the chat, if anybody is looking to write your own book, I've put the flow formula, how this is my breakthrough method for flow writing, soul writing, really. How to do that. There's the Sacred Author Incubator. If you want to get published in my next book, the Unbreakable Spirit book, there is at least one spot in that. And then Soulful Book Journey, if you want to write, edit, and prepare to publish your own full book, not just a chapter. Sandi, thank you so much. I'm actually going to take you and me off of the spotlight here, and then we'll just go have everybody who has a copy of your book. I'm going to remove the spotlight here from you and me. I'm going to ask all the authors, if you have a copy of your book, just hold it up. Anybody else, we invite you to go buy it on Amazon and leave a review. Thank you so much, Elfie, Sharo Keen, Sandi, Vajrama. Hyla was our amazing copy editor and proofreader. Melanie, good to see you. Thank you so much, everyone. We will be back here tomorrow for the second day of our book launch with 5 more amazing, I think 4 authors plus our cover artist. And then again, thank you so much. I'm going to take everybody off mute so we can all, how do I do this? Unmute more. Ask all to unmute so we can all say goodbye. Namaste, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Laura.
Namaste.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Call
Bye.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.